everybody. Welcome to week 3 of Global Health. This week we cover 2 chapters again. Chapter 4, Environmental and Occupational Epidemiology. Epidemiology is the fascinating study of the distribution and determinants of health and disease in human populations. It's fascinating to understand how the environment may create this distribution and cause some of the health issues and diseases within human populations, as well as occupational epidemiology. At one point in time, there were no safety laws. Somebody wrote last week about the labor and safety laws and how they've really come a long way, and they have. Our discussion question this week is about occupational epidemiology, and one of the most interesting things is that we've sort of gotten away from studying the toxins and environmental challenges in the workplace and started talking more about some of the psychosocial challenges in the workplace. In addition to this, what we're really referring to is stress and how stress is directly linked to many disease factors. Your textbook talks even all the way down to genomes and how genomes change based under different types of stress. When you talk about stress in the workplace, some of the obvious things, conflicts with coworkers or supervisors, but also other things that we may or may not think about, like what type of surface may you be standing on all day long? What is your chair like? What are the time constraints like? How pressured do you feel to complete things in a timely fashion or in a specific manner? The other things that can go along with that might include your personality and the way the company runs. You may not feel comfortable with some of the things that happen, yet you can't just leave your job. So this chapter is very, very interesting and talks a little bit about epidemiology and reviews it. So we've talked about epidemiology in our concepts of epidemiology class, and we'll review them more here as well. Chapter is rather short, however, it's chock full of information. So read it carefully and keep in mind that we're building a glossary. And if you look at the end of each chapter, you might sort of chuckle a little to yourself, seeing that each and every one of the 24 chapters that we read has around 3 pages of glossary terms and definitions. And so, of course, we're not going to probably memorize all of those, but you want to be able to have access to them and have sort of a clear understanding of how they relate. So don't forget about those connections, definitions, questions, forms as we go through and we're building that glossary. Things that are really bizarre words that you may not understand or something that meant something is important to keep that glossary for your portfolio at the end, just a sort of reminder about that. Chapter 5 is something that's really interesting. It's called Geospatial Data for Environmental Health. And so we start to take a look at geospatial data and what's going on there and what are we talking about. And so, of course, we want to talk about the geographical information and how certain areas may be affected by certain things. So for this part, you're going to learn all about GIS mapping and what it does and how we design it. There's some really very interesting and cool is the best word I can use to describe it, ways in which we can look at what may happen or potential for disease based off of wind, water currents, where the spill perhaps happened, where the bugs are, where the bees are, where the bees aren't. A whole slew of things that we can figure out and find out by building these layers of maps. And so I want you to sort of go through, there's some really terrific software out there where you can build these maps. And if you were an environmental scientist, it would be one of the things that you would have to do. You would have to learn how to do that. But in this case, we're going to just sort of talk about them and you're going to figure out the spatial portion of it. And we're learning every day new things about how we do something that affects the environment and that impacts the whole entire world. So remember, part of the textbook title here is From Global to Local. And we can certainly reverse that from local to global. And many of you have already indicated that each and every one of us has a personal responsibility, yet maybe not everybody's on board with that in society. So that's interesting. So as we go through all of this, we start to talk about a whole slew of key terms and what some of the mapping and spatial analysis do, and how we layer maps in order to figure out what's going on. There's some really interesting words that I want you to take a look at on page 115 when we're looking at mapping and that layering that I just described to you. And then it starts to talk about giving you examples about what do we actually do with this geographic information systems, and how do we use it to provide us with information. And so read that over and try to apply it. Our homework for this chapter is question number 2, and it is how will you or how might basic operations of a GIS and spatial analysis tools help to meet some of the following research needs. And so when you take a look at that in our content, you'll see that I've added it in there. Go to week 3. And as we're in here, we have our PowerPoints from the 2 chapters, our discussion regarding the stress that I talked about. Here's our assignment details, and when you open this up, it will open up a Word document that will provide you with these questions that I'm reading right now. But what you're going to do is you're going to, and I'll follow sort of an example of one thing. We're going to investigate the health impact of an accidental release of a toxic agent into a stream. So you're going to start to use some of the GIS operations and some of the spatial analysis tools described in the textbook to actually answer the following questions. What data layers might you need? The actual, the questions that the various operations might answer. So for this case, you know, in the water, if the water were perhaps salt water, does that negate the toxin? Does it worsen the toxin? So there are some interesting things there. What's the rate of water flow? What animals live in there? Where does that stream go to? Who eats in there? Are there bears? Are there other mammals? And do people bathe in there? And so there's some really interesting things as far as that goes, that you'll answer those things and see if you can answer those questions. And then you'll go to the next one, which is about the mosquito spraying and how do we determine that. And it's all typed on this answer sheet in the Word document that will pop open. As usual, if you have any questions or problems, please feel free to contact me. You guys so far are doing a great job. I'm very impressed. There's not many of us, but we're getting through it, so that's great. The other thing that I want to have you note that you may have sort of gotten a sneak peek at before when I showed you the previous slide, but the fact is that we are also beginning our group work this week. So the group work for this week is literally for you to introduce yourselves to one another in your groups, even though you've been talking and doing a good job on the discussion boards. Introduce yourselves and begin to talk about what actually our project is. Remember that we're going to figure out some sort of environmental hazard, some sort of environmental condition, some environmental tragedy, the hurricane. Some awful things are happening as a result of both our 2 last hurricanes, correct? And so those groups of 2 or 3, they were randomly selected. And so you'll go into that group and you guys will talk about what you're thinking and what topic you'd like to discuss. So if you come over to your side tab here, you'll see where you have basically what global health is, and then the information tab, our content, where we find all this, your discussions, as you already know, and then your groups. And so if you look at this, I'm not in a group, so as a student, I don't have this group setting, so I'm sorry for that. But if I exit out of the preview, you guys should be able to see that you have groups in here. And when you have your groups, you'll be able to figure out who's with who and what goes on, and this is how that happens. So if you cannot see this, or your groups do not open up, or your teamwork does not open up, then please be in touch with me so that I can see what's wrong. But you don't have to plan a meet together. You can certainly use some of these tools. Here's a blog, here's a file exchange, here's a journal, here's some tasks. You can send emails to one another, or all of you, some of you, one of you can start discussion board threads. So, and in this case, we have Joyce and Michelle, and of course myself in here. You'll see down here that all these tools will open up. They're clickable. And then down here, the group assignment, and the group assignment topic is, again, this project where you're going to attach your actual topic or group project, team project request. And so I hope that helps you. And again, if you're unable to see your group, it doesn't pop up, please let me know, because they're all in there and I'm ready and waiting for all of you. So I hope you have a great week and have fun reading the chapters. Again, they're short, quick chapters, but there's lots of information in there. Okay, be well, take care, bye-bye.